Hey guys, welcome back. Ways of the World, a brief global history with sources, as we continue our study of pastoral peoples on the global stage. And today, we are going to focus on encountering the Mongols in China, Persia, and Russia. So let's start with China and the Mongols. So the Mongol conquest of China was difficult. It took about 70 years, 1209 to 1279. It began in northern China, ruled by dynasties of nomadic origin, and was vastly destructive. The conquest of southern China, which was ruled by the Song dynasty, was far less violent. There's more interest in accommodation of the local populace, and landowners were guaranteed their estates in return for support. And the Mongols unified a divided China, and many made believe that the Mongols had been granted the mandate of heaven. And the Mongols didn't know how to govern an agricultural society, so they used Chinese practices. So being allowed to continue traditions that the Chinese were familiar with was also helpful. It gave themselves a Chinese dynastic title, the Mongols did, called the Yuan, or quote-unquote great beginnings. And they built a new capital city, Khanbalik, or quote-unquote city of the Khan, which is now Beijing. Kublai Khan, who ruled from 1271 to 1294, had a set of ancestral tablets made, and that undertook some policies that evoked values of a benevolent Chinese emperor. Still, Mongol rule was harsh, exploitative, and foreign. Mongols did not become Chinese, and Marco Polo said they treated the Chinese like slaves. Now, part of the capital was set up like the steppes. They relied heavily on foreigners for administration rather than the traditional administrative system. And few Mongols learned Chinese. Mongol law discriminated against Chinese, and Mongol women were shockingly free compared to Chinese standards. And by 1368, rebellions had forced the Mongols out of China. All right, Kublai Khan. This famous portrait of Kublai Khan was probably painted by Aniko, 1244 to 1306, a Nepalese artist and architect who designed a number of buildings for China's Mongol ruler. He's the grandson of Chinggis Khan, who ruled China from 1271 to 1294. All right, Persia and the Mongols. All right, let's talk about the conquest of Persia. The first invasion was led by Chinggis Khan in 1219, and it took 2 years. The second assault was under his grandson, 1251 to 1258. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Hulegu, Hulegu. There's a massive impact of invasion. It's an unprecedented amount of destruction, and it really shook their faith. How could Muslims be savaged so badly by infidels? And then the sacking of Baghdad in 1258 completely ended the Abbasid Caliphate. And there's profound damage to Persian and Iraqi agriculture, and there's an increase in wine and silk production under the Mongols. The Mongols were transformed far more in Persia than in China. There's an extensive use of Persian bureaucracy. Ghazan, who ruled from 1295 to 1304, tried to repair some of the earlier damage, and Mongols in Persia even converted to Islam on a large scale. And Mongol elites learned some Persian and actually took up agriculture. And however, the Mongol dynasty collapsed in the 1330s. So we see the further the Mongols are away from Mongolia and their homeland, the more apt they are to adapt the conquered people's traditions, culturally, economically, and politically. All right, the Mongols and Islam in Persia. So this image from the first half of the 14th century depicts a Mongol prince studying the Quran in what is likely a mosque tent. The arch at the left marks the mihrab, which points toward Mecca and indicates the direction that worshippers should face during ritual prayers. Above it is an inscription reading, "Allah is the ruler," and the conversion of the Mongols in Persia to Islam was a crucial development in their rule over the region. All right, Mongol rulers and their women. So the wives of Mongol rulers exercised considerable influence at court. This 14th century painting shows Chinggis Khan's fourth son, Tulu, the ruler of the Mongol heartland after his father's death, with his Christian wife, Sorghaghtani. After her husband's early death from alcoholism, she maneuvered her children, including Kublai Khan, into very powerful positions and strongly encouraged them in the direction of religious toleration. All right, Russia and the Mongols. So, Mongol devastation of Russia was from 1237 to 1240. Russia was a number of independent principalities. They could not unite against the Mongol threat. And there's a vast amount of destruction of cities, widespread slaughter, and deportation of skilled workers. Russia was integrated into the Mongol Empire as the Kipchak Khanate. Russians called it the quote-unquote Khanate of the Golden Horde. But Mongols did not occupy Russia. Instead, they remained on the steppes north of the Black and Caspian Seas and collected tribute and heavy taxes. They also raided for slaves. Some Russian princes and the Russian Orthodox Church flourished under Mongol rule. Moscow became the primary tribute collector for the Mongols, and the Mongol rulers of Russia were far less assimilated or influenced. The Russian princes adopted Mongol weapons, diplomatic rituals, court practices, the tax system, and even the military draft. And Moscow became the core of a new Russian state. They used the Mongol mounted courier service within their principalities as well. And Russians broke free of Mongol rule, however, by the end of the 15th century. All right, Mongol Russia. So this 16th century painting depicts the Mongol burning of the Russian city of Ryazan, Ryazan in 1237. And their similar destruction awaited many Russian towns that resisted the invaders. So how might the difference in time between this event, 1237, and the painting, the 16th century, which is the 1500s, have influenced the depiction of this event? Well, the image shows the Mongols here on horseback in a more negative light than may have been warranted by actual events. It shows buildings that may not have existed during the 13th century, and that peasants are being burned highlights the perception that Mongols were barbarians. And that concludes our study of encountering the Mongols in China, Persia, and Russia. I will see you guys next time for the Mongol Empire as a Eurasian network.